So at the start of this year, my bench press was 185 pounds. My back squat max was roughly 235 pounds. And my deadlift max was roughly 350 at the time. At the peak of my strength, my deadlift max was 460 pounds. My back squat max was 355 pounds. And my bench press, even though that's a little bit different from the two lifts I just mentioned, and I'll get into that, my bench press all-time max this year was 270 pounds. Now that's pretty good for a first year, even as a beginner. That's pretty good. There's a caveat to that though. What might that be? Well, roughly July of this year, I sustained a lower back injury. And that was a pretty serious curveball. And you know what? I'm still recovering from that. I still need to program in a way that doesn't aggravate my lower back injury. And I bring this up because even though this is really my first year of serious lifting where I kind of knew what I was doing, or I was seeing crazy progress, I feel like I should let people know that and this goes especially true for beginner lifters and inexperienced lifters or young lifters. Don't get me wrong, guys. I've been through the phase of, gear up, wrap the belt as tight as you can, lather your hands up in chalk, put the compression knee sleeves on, the compression elbow sleeves on, do everything you can to lift the most weight possible every single day. I've been there, done that. Put the music on, get the smellings. I've been there, done that. But you have to understand, if you're not careful, all it takes, I'm serious, all it takes, one bad rep. One bad rep. That's it. It doesn't matter if you've been hitting PRs for months, every week, and you're putting on crazy strength. If you're not careful about it, one bad rep. That's it. That's all it takes. Take me, for example. I was hitting crazy PRs for every single one of my lifts. I was hitting 10-pound PRs for my bench. I was hitting 10, 15-pound PRs for my squat and deadlift week to week for both lifts every week for like 3 months, dude. If you're one of those guys who is like, whatever it takes to hit 5 pounds more, I understand that. I understand that. You have to be able to do that for as long as you can, though, without getting injured. Because all of the progress I made this year, with the exception of maybe bench, all of it went away. So you have to be careful. And, for me personally, yeah, it sucks. I lost all that progress. At the same time, though, not all is lost, because I've been going to the gym every single day, 7 days a week, with the exception of recently where I started taking Sundays off, and the exception of the first 2 months of my lifting where I was only lifting 4 days a week. I would say minimum 7 sessions a week on average, So this first year of lifting, yeah, it's only 1 year. There's only so many days in a year. But at the same time, I'm getting in an insane amount of volume. I am getting in so many sessions week to week. I'm doing 2 a days. It wasn't uncommon I would go to the gym 3 times a day. It wasn't uncommon I maxed 2 different lifts in one day. It's not uncommon for me to max multiple lifts in a single day. And put that into perspective. How many times a week are you maxing? Or how many times a week is the average gym goer maxing? I'd be surprised if it's more than once a week. Majority of lifters aren't really maxing at all. And it seems counterproductive, and yeah, I did get injured doing it. But you got to keep in mind, my nervous system is so adapted to maxing out. It is so adapted to maxing out. Anything under that, I can recover super easily. And I wish I realized that sooner. I wish I took advantage of that sooner, and I wish I incorporated that into my programming sooner. Because if I did, I would be a hell of a lot stronger. One more thing that I want to bring up, and I'm going to elaborate on this further. Two more things. Do cardio. Do cardio. Walk. That's all it takes, really. Just walk for 40 minutes. Walk 2 miles a day, a mile a day, if that. Run a mile a day. It's easy. It's simple. It's simple. Why do I say that? Well, your stamina is going to be a lot better. And I'm going to make a separate video on this. Walking and running with proper form, in a way that isn't conducive of joint pain or any injury, is actually super beneficial for recovery, in my experience. The second thing that I want to bring up, raw lifting. I know what you might be thinking, holy buckets, you're recovering from an injury. Why are you lifting raw? And why are you maxing daily? Or, getting close to your all-time max for this period of your training, so close, minimum, every day. Why are you doing that? Well, I'm gonna make a separate video on this, like I said, but I have found out, and it's gonna sound so cliche, when you focus on technique, when you focus on bar speed and precision and perfection in a lift, when you only permit a slight breakdown, subtle breakdown, that's as much as you'll allow your form to be broken down. And you call the max after that. And you can see this in the shorts that I've uploaded. That makes recovery a hell of a lot easier. When I go double overhand, when I don't use chalk, when I don't use a belt, when I don't use any sleeves, when I don't get hyped up on music or smelling salts or whatever, and I just focus on precision, I have found that it makes recovery a whole lot easier simply because of the fact that the weight is a lot less. And you might be thinking, well, isn't it the same amount of stress on the body if I'm able to lift 405 raw but 425 with a belt, isn't that the same impact on my recovery? It isn't. And this is why you see a lot of beginner lifters able to pull off crazy volume. And compare that to like Eddie Hall, who, at least from what he says, max deadlift, and this is peak frequency for him at the time, I think, once every other week. It's because even though the RPE, right, that perceived exertion is the same, Eddie Hall takes a hell of a lot more time to recover because that amount of weight, I don't know if it's because of the human body limits or whatever, it affects the body a whole lot more. And that's simply because it is more weight. It's more recovery needed for that. Ever since I started lifting raw, double overhand for deadlift, I can do them every single day. I can work up to like 85% minimum every single day, and I can hit a max every single day. In summary, what should you do for this year of lifting? Heavy emphasis on technique, heavy emphasis on bar speed, and program your training with that in mind. Start learning how to incorporate those two principles into your training. Do it and recover as hard as you can. And at the same time, you can get amped up. You can get psyched up for a max attempt. Of course you can. I'm not saying you can't do that. Go and look at the Bulgarians training in the 80s and 90s. Look up those training hall videos. They're all screaming their heads off. But there's one constant across all of them. Their form is damn near perfect. It's damn near perfect. So if you're going to get amped up, if you're going to get crazy, you have to have perfect form for it. Because remember what I said, and you'll hear a ton of people saying this too, all it takes is one bad rep, one fault in your technique, and you're on the sideline for months or years if it's really bad, And that's not meant to scare you, but you have to be conscientious. I don't even know if I said that word right. I just kind of wanted to say it because it sounded funny, or not funny, but nice. But you have to be conscious of that fact. So figured I would make this since, it's January 1st, it's 2026. I got big goals for this year, big goals, big aspirations, intense ambition to succeed. And we're going to see what happens.